Tatanastara to all the Xakijis, Pokemon's, Kupes, Chiefs. My name is Lee Crowchild, and I'm running for National Chief, and I'm asking for your vote. I was asked about this. You know, in the past, all this campaign, we've been so used to doing 2-minute sound bites, and you try and get everything into 2 minutes. Now I'm giving 20 minutes. Like, holy, what am I going to talk about? But I do have a few things I want to say. I want to talk about the things that I believe. Because they're things I've come to believe. And these are what matter to me. My uncle, he's long past that, but he coined this phrase during those American Indian movement days. And he told me, he says, Lee, we have to have a native conscience re-strengthening. It's one thing to fight for our rights and that, but really we need to get back to what is our own consciousness. Don't care about what the other side says. And he was referring to the white people. Don't care about what they think of that. Us, as people of the land, we have to renew our own consciousness. We have to re-strengthen that. And that arose out of the American Indian movement days. Those of you are a little bit older than me would know that. Those of you who are younger, well, this is a bit of the history. So what matters to me? Jurisdiction, capable institutes of governance, culture, strategic thinking, and leadership. These all matter, and this is what brings me here to talk before you. I lay out everything under 4 principles. Environmental accountability. We know that that's a reality. We have to be accountable to our environment. We have to work towards economic parity. And we have to look at what's the cultural and social impact of all our actions. But at the core of all that is, what is our spiritual sustainability telling us? The matter of fact is, we're all at this precipice of real truth telling. I'm going to tell you about this ceremony that was taught to me by a Blackfoot elder, a man I respected very much. And he says, there's this ceremony that took place a long time ago. And he says, this is the English translation for it, and it's called making wolf. Why do I use the word making wolf? He said, when we think about it, you see a wolf there. And we all want to romanticize what it looks like, and we want to be one with the wolf and that. But we forget to understand that it's also a wild animal, and it can easily turn on us. So he says, I'm going to give you an example here. He says, long time ago, when 2 tribes went at war, and it could be anybody, it could be Blackfoots and Crees around here, that's what they are. That's what I know. It could be us Tsuut'ina and the Crees. We follow anybody anyways. But the battle took place. Then after the breaking away, when the battle was over and people walked away to lick their wounds and gather their dead, one of the chiefs would call his tobacco runner forward. And he'd give his chief's pipe to that tobacco runner and his tobacco, and he says, I need you to go over to that other camp, the chief's camp there, and offer this pipe and this tobacco. And say, because we're going to have a talk about this. We're going to have a war lodge. That tobacco runner was like an emissary, really important role. So he would go there, and upon sight, he could be killed. Or he could be brought to the chief, present his tobacco, and says, my chief wants to have this war lodge. So that chief would decide if he takes it or not. If he takes it and he smokes it and says, yes, we're going to have a war lodge. So they go back. So they agree on the location. Both sides would come together. And as they come together and they sit in those circle with their spiritual leaders and the spiritual people, they would have their own ceremonies, their own pipes. They'd smoke their own pipes between themselves. Nobody would share anything at all. And after all those protocols were done, one side would get up and the narrative would begin. And that person would say, my war deed in this battle was, I killed 2 of you, there and there. The other side would get up and reciprocate that. And it could be somebody that says, yes, that is, you know who those were? That was my best friend there, and that was my uncle over there that you killed. Here's my war deed. And they would orate what their deeds were. So one by one, they would all get up and they would tell their truth, and this is where the making wolf part comes out. Because once everything has been said, they have 2 options. they say, well, we don't need to fight anymore. It's done. Or else you can tell us, say, okay, you buggers, you son of a bitches, let's go out and finish this battle. Well, those are your two outcomes. Well, what the reality was, is the truth was told. So both sides can say with true honesty that that's what that battle was. For us, Tsuut'ina, we did that with Poundmakers Reserve. Cut knife, Saskatchewan, they call it. And that truth telling came actually not too long ago, maybe 6 or 7 years ago. You know, so we both know what the battle was. It was truth. So now let's bring this into modern day context. For us in the prairies, it was about signing of treaties. And the signing of treaties, government came back and says, well, we don't really want to fight. We don't want to kill each other. So we're asking you for this treaty, this treaty of peace. And so we said, okay, I think that's makes good sense. You know, so we signed this treaty. We touched the pen and it became our signature. Right after a treaty was signed, the government says, oh, by the way, this is how we're going to govern you. It's called the Indian Act. And that's going to guarantee you the things that you need. I always use a horse as a metaphor. And in that metaphor, it says, it's our knowledge. Our knowledge is contained in that horse. So the government says, I'm going to hold this horse for you. So we sign that treaty. We get the Indian Act. And so what do they bring out? Is they bring out the smallpox blankets. Because their intention was never to honor the treaty, really. But they were going to wipe us out little by little. That didn't work. So they brought out the residential schools, and we all know the legacy of that. I don't need to go on that too much. And when that wasn't quite working the way they wanted it, they introduced the 60s scoop. A lot of my friends my age are recipients of that 60s scoop. And those of us that weren't fitting in any of those categories, what did they introduce? Busing. We're going to bus your kids into the cities, the villages, the towns, so they can learn to be like us. You know, and so that's how it went. You know, I remember a long time ago, Indian Act says you can education up to grade 8. Well, everybody got to grade 8. So, well, we want them to have more education. And the government says, well, we can't give you any money. We can't do that because it's not in the Indian Act. So they have to be creative and thinking. It says, I have an idea. Rather than youth being 16, let's make youth up to 18. And then not long after that, let's make it up to 21. And finally, it's 29. This was told to me by a name leader who passed on now. And he says, you know what they did? They tricked us into calling everybody youth now. So you create this guardian and this ward relationship. So that's how we got funded to go to school, get our education, become those doctors and lawyers that we all talk about. You know, and as we became those educated, they says, well, you know, we kind of want to keep you humble. So we're going to create this millennial school. But we don't have to do it anymore because we've trained you how to do that. You know, and this talks to some of the bills that have been passed. You know, so this is where we are. And now they say, okay, and here's your horseback, by the way. And so the horse is standing there, and we're talking to it, but it's saying, I'm right here. I don't, you know, tell me what to do. I'm right here for you. And yet we lost the language of how to communicate it because we've adopted a whole different way of talking. So all of that part of that battle was based on ignorance and racism. Like it says, there's two sides to every battle. So on our side, when we signed a treaty, we agreed, no, we're not going to kill. Many of our warriors and our women, you know, they said, no, this is not working. I don't believe this. But I mean, we can't break the treaty. And if the government wants to be a war of the state, well, so be it. I'll make sure they're going to pay for that. So I'm going to use my body. It's my only weapon I got left. My body is, I'm going to use alcohol. I'm going to use drugs. And in a lot of instances, I'm going to sell my body for sex. This is my weapons to get back at them. What did that create? It created this idea of prejudice. So that's our story. You got racism, you got prejudice, two different concepts, but they have the same outcome. And now they're jumping to reconciliation. Everyone wants to jump to reconciliation. And I say, no, we gotta put that to the side for right now because we haven't even talked about the truth yet. So that's the ideas of making wolf. That ceremony had to be, of those battles have to be validated by both sides. So no lies could be told. It honors the fallen, and the brave deeds that both sides did. So this is what we need to do now with Canada, not just the governments, but all of Canada. We also need to look at our own involvement in this. Because right now, we're feeding the beast, the political system. That political system is lying to us. Because nowadays we know the predator and we see them feed on us. And we're aware that to starve the beast is our destiny. That's why we say these things, that's why we fight. You know, that side is kind to us and they are polite, but they're never honest. We need to reclaim our own memory, and that is what unmarked graves are signaling to us. All these graves fund, there's this, reclaim the memory. Because, you know, the loss of being human is being replaced by our false prides. That's why the drugs and alcohol abuse prosper, because it's a false pride. It isn't enough to say I'm a traditionalist, or that I can speak my language, or it's about respect. We have to understand tradition, culture, sharing of love. And that's the way it was a long time ago. I talked about economic accountability. I have to thank National Chief Perry Bellegarde. He put me on the Committee for Fiscal Relations, the Joint Fiscal Relations Net. And it was about the 10-year fiscal relation. Now, at that time, I brought some of my staff in at that time, and we always talked about treaty. And they said, oh yeah, we'll take that in. So the next meeting, it's taken out. We have to bring it back in again. And we thought, okay, I understand now, take it out. Next meeting is taken out. So this went on for 2 years. And in the end, you know, they began to get it. I said, okay, now we understand this, you know. But they're in a conundrum because chiefs have asked me, well, should I accept this? And it puts me in a tough position. I say, well, you needed that money probably 20, 25 years ago. So the people have to eat. So you need to do what you do. And I said, but there's a caveat in here. You can take this money, start to push for constitutional change, amendments to the Constitution. So we're not listed under Section 35. We're in fact determining what the future, how Canada is going to operate on our land. And I'll say it as it is, our stolen land. That's what I learned about fiscal relations. The government is not truthful about all of this. They say it's found money. No, it's money that's already in there. You know, Privy Council has already determined that. You know, so if we're fighting and slamming our fists and stomping our feet, they just have to sit on their hands and say, yeah, I hear you, but we're not going to do anything about it. But I hear you. Economic accountability has been a source of division where we should be seeking a shared vision that builds consensus on a path forward with better housing, jobs, water, education, and health. We achieve that by gathering our own data. You know, we use the data from Stats Canada or Health Canada, and we know that those are not the right numbers. You know, they say in your nation, well, maybe you're a nation of 2,000, but 75% of them are gone. So you know, you're a nation of 500 people. You're going to fund for 500 people. Everybody else lives in a different area code. Let them worry about that. But we know in our kinship lines that that's not the truth. Our kinship lines go far and wide. So we're always constantly underfunded. And we're always demanding this because we don't have control over our own data. There's an acronym, OCAP, OCAP. That's ownership, control, access, and permission. So if we go down this road, and I would tell all you chiefs, you know, now that they've given us money to do this, start gathering the information for yourself. There's they call them First Nations information governance centers. Make use of them so you're gathering your own data that you have control over, and you can give permission whenever you see fit. You know, as national chief, I'm not going to say, no, I'm going to demand you that. No, this is your data because this is what sovereignty practices actually look like. So it means that every nation owns its own data and they share it as each nation sees fit. This helps in justifying the real funding to nations. We've all been funded for a very long time. In that economic parity, we have the manpower, space, capability to be part of the economics of our own economic recovery. Equity, where our attention and intention goes, so does our energy flow. We have to build sustainable energy to meet the needs of our economic parity because that builds greater ownership and a sustained economic flow. we have to, on my nation, I introduced a business charter. So, and what that is, it effectively separate politics from business. And it helped to breed First Nations ventures to success. We all know that we like to create these relationships and that, and, you know, companies are taking a risk, you know, if it's not clear that there's actual separation from business from politics, because leadership always changes. But when you have a charter in place and you have your businesses, that stays intact. And you get a lot of people that are more interested in answering to that because they know they're secure. But it requires technology. I've listened today about everybody say, well, we don't have no access in the far north. Yes, that's true. There's technologies that are emerging that doesn't belong to big corporations like your TELUS or your Bell or your Rogers or any of those, because those are the big money eaters. They'll say, yeah, we'll help you. We'll give you, kind of help you a little bit, but we're gonna get the profits from that. You know, in Alberta, on our casinos there, it's sort of an equity program. Whatever revenue we make, and reluctantly we have to give it to the province. That's just the way it goes. But what's distributed there is to all the nations across Alberta. They get a little portion of that revenue. So as we move forward in an economic flow, we may need to do that as well. Greater employment outcomes bring more training and capacity building, because we need to rebuild family systems and kinship lines to help to achieve the dreams of, you know, and these are the dreams from the spirit world. We all talk about that. You know, this is what they're telling us. This is what the found graves are telling us, because there needs to be a nationwide pathway to address the broken chain of fatherhood. We all know that story. You know, we need to respect our women leaders and our chiefs, because they are our backbone. We can't move forward anymore if we don't have a balanced approach in chieftainship. National chief, as me, I would rely on the words of our women leaders, our women chiefs. I've worked a lot with the Muslim community here in Calgary, because they come from oppression. They know what it feels like, and they ask questions. Well, what do I need? You know, how can we help, or what can be part of this? You know, I work for the Calgary Alliance for the Common Good, and that's made up of all the church groups in Calgary. I don't go to church myself. I'm kind of a practice our traditional ways, but I know in that practice we're talking about how we build the bridges with other people. You know, because it's a spiritual sustainability. Because living our truth is what we were meant to be. Because it always has been our compass point. Relatives of our past are there to help. We're reclaiming our memory because civilization has tried to erase it. I've only got 2 minutes left here. So my vision for AFN. There is a need for a big reset. AFN has to become relevant to the voices of chiefs across Canada. And I've said that all along. We have used non-native definitions and perspectives of defining our own sovereignty, because we're impacted by Section 35, and others because it is based on racism and ignorance. I'm going to ask the chiefs, all of you out here, to help me to head up the needs of our nation and to use our own methodologies, because our own First Nation laws are the deepest expressions of our culture and our values. I'm not the smartest person here, but all of you chiefs collectively, you are. And I'm going to ask you to all join me in doing this. You know, we have to embrace the technology, and today was a good example of that. In the past 18 months, you know, the use of Zoom, we've all become a little bit used to it. We have to stop shaming the settler state, because they don't care. They can do whatever they're doing. The despair is deep, and we know that, and it comes out as self-harm and lashing out. Our own families do that. So that's about making both. There needs to be a native conscience re-strengthening, and it rose out of the AIM days, but it was with us all along. Jurisdiction, capable institution, and governance net. Now is the time for real chieftainship to rise up, and we, AFN, will support that. I will call on all chiefs to assist me, and I will in turn stand beside you all the way, always under your authority. So I thank you for listening to me, and I ask that you vote for me tomorrow. See us, Gus. Thank you.